be short. Because I'm afraid that it's my fault, my health is not what it should be. So,
thank you.
Any short questions and short answers?
Short questions.
You perhaps, anyone has a question? Apart you had yes, start with someone else. Yes. Anyone else?
Why are there two specific Purims? Why is there Purim Katan and Purim? Maybe we can start
Well, good morning first, everyone, the people listening. So Purim Katan and Purim Gadol is because of the extra intercalated month of Adar Rishon, which in the 90-year cycle comes a few years, and so it's really a double month.
So when we only have 1 month, we don't celebrate the Katan, just the Purim Gadol.
Purim Katan, so people say it's the last section of Orach Chaim, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, says you should make a little bit more of a Suda than usual.
Okay.
It's a Tachanon, so. Yes, any other questions?
A quick question.
Yes.
Okay. On the giving of the Torah. Okay.
We
have one contiguous tablet, divided somewhat with a separation in the middle, 5 and 5. Of unknown dimensions, unknown weight, etc. Moshe carries them down unspecified distance to the bottom. Now he smashes them. Well, what happened to the fragments?
The fragments are gathered together and they're put in the Holy Ark to be preserved. Should not, and they were preserved throughout the first temple period, and they disappeared.
Okay. And Moshe, from what I understand, gave an exact replica of the Torah to each one of the 12 tribes. What happened to that?
Well, they were also preserved. The question is where? Where were they preserved? I think I'll have to...
Where are they? What happened to them?
I'll have to find you the answer for tomorrow.
Okay, fair enough.
There's a discussion what happened to them. Which ark they were put in. So now I'm going to continue here on this sheet. But this is the paraphrase to understand Yom Kippur Kippurim. And we go to the second paragraph. So, the second paragraph. See, Rav Dessler was a very wide commentator on the inner aspects of Torah, drawing from all the sources of Jewish tradition. And he had what we call today a psychological approach. And not that he was limited, because he wrote Talmudical discussions, halachic discussions, also at a very high level. But what is perhaps his unique contribution in the history of Jewish thought is that he tried to apply the inner significance of the words of the Torah, the written Torah, the oral tradition, and the mitzvot, how this should be applied in the daily life of the individual to improve character. Because, you say, the main emphasis of his teaching, and also together what we call the Musar of the Torah, Torah means giving direction to life, how people should use their power of freedom, which is the creative power of the human being, for good and not for evil. So even though we know Purim has got a lot to do with anti-Semitism, and Purim is really, we can call it a celebration. Oh yes, thank you very much. It's a celebration of the ultimate victory of anti-Semitism in the nations of the world, and how, unfortunately, the people of Israel have been the target of so much hatred, but ultimately there will be a redemption. And he applies this celebration of Purim to each one of us individuals, because ultimately the battle we find, which is so terrible today, between powers of hate and powers of love amongst the nations of the world, between the use of the enormous development of the power of the human being to control nature. So we see in the international relations and the different groups of society have not reached the possibility of removing the increase of the danger to the survival of the human race through greed, through power politics, and putting might above right. So it's true, ultimately everything goes back to individuals. If mankind would accept the concept of the control of the individual, instinct for greed, for power, for pleasure, and to use it only for good, not for evil, mankind would be able to live in peace. So therefore, this struggle exists amongst each one of us, just each one at his level. So now I'm speaking of the next paragraph, where Rav Dessler refers to Kuntras HaChesed, which is perhaps his greatest contribution. The Kuntras HaChesed, he develops loving kindness. We all know this is the root of virtue in the world. People are not just interested in their self-interest, but they're able to overcome self-interest in order to help other people. And so we can paraphrase his words. He elaborated this in all his writings, in many different essays and talks. He said, Abba hi toldot hanadibu. Love, which develops within the human emotions, is a result of acts of generosity. We find in human nature that a person who gives a great deal to another person increases the love for that person. And the best example is parents to children. The way in which mothers so frequently develop the power of love, it comes through doing everything for their children. Go through the birth pangs and then the early years, and they do it with such willingness, and that constantly develops the power of love to a child. That's why also the worst situation is Moloch worship, or when parents are happy if their children die, and they're happy if their children they kill others. I mean, this is destroying the power of love at its very source. Because we even find this power of love in the animal world. It's a deep instinct. It's not for nothing, the word for mercy What's the word for mercy in Hebrew?
Racham.
Rachamim. What's the root?
Rechem.
What's rechem mean?
The womb.
The womb. So human beings were created with such a possibility to develop love, mothers especially. And this is the constant symbol. It says that, let's say, in consolation. So what do the prophets say? Like a person whose mother comforts him, so God says, I'll comfort you. So we see therefore that, I use the words again, the more a person gives, the more he loves. And the truth is, this is indicated in the Hebrew language. Because hav, hovul Hashem, means to give. It's the different aspects of giving, but the term hovul in the Bible means to give. Hey base. And according to the principle, if you want it in Hebrew, this is one of the best principles to use in the Hebrew language, is to know that all roots in Hebrew go back to two basic verbal letters, which make up a verbal concept. This is the classical old grammarians had a difference of opinion. Do Hebrew words in the verbal roots, which is generally speaking the root for a noun, do that 3 letters or 2 letters? But it's not. It's just a question of language, because everyone agrees that the 3rd letter is generally speaking a variant. One of the letters is a variant. So you have hav means to give, and the aleph is the individuality in Hebrew, the ego. So it means giving the ego. So if a mother gives her ego for a baby, and as they grow up, it's still there, whatever differences occur. And that's why it's rachamim. So therefore, muvanu shenedivot ve'echreach tadat sasri. Now, the concept of doing things for your own free will and for your own emotions is the opposite of being forced to do something. Tadat sasri. That means, where does really a generosity develop? In a case where there's freedom of choice. It means you can't really call it an act of charity if there's an obligation to pay a tax to also to help the poor. We pay our taxes in order to provide child allowances, to provide. So if I give them a thing, oh, I'm not interested in children, don't want to give, but I'm forced to give. That's not really, does not demonstrate generosity. A person, by the law of the government, it's got to pay his taxes. And I'm going to avoid the taxes here because the taxation goes to people who don't really need it. They shouldn't have so many children. Some people say, well, some people, why should some taxation go to the colleges? Don't believe in college education. It doesn't help. You're obligated to do it. So therefore, if it's free, if it's something where you have choice, there you can apply the principle of generosity. A person's got power of choice, he will be able to reach true love. He can give over. On this I also want to add something which we often come across, that even in the mind of a person who keeps the mitzvah, and he's got very strong faith in God, and therefore his faith in God is so strong, he says, if God tells me I have to do it, so I have to, I've got no choice. And there's some people, even they feel they've got no choice. They've been educated, they've educated themselves, that I've got no choice in the matter. That's why I'm fulfilling these mitzvot. That's the mitzvah voice. So, who is greater? The person who fulfills the mitzvot because he feels he's got no choice. And you ask him, why do you do it? Why do you put on tefillin? And why do you give your tithe? Answer, says, God said so. I've been educated, and with me I'm inhibited to do anything that God has commanded me to do. Just like that some children, they say, well, I'm educated in such a way, if my father and mother tell me something, I have to do it. So I have to do it, I've got no choice. So all right, it's also a good thing. The person keeps the law. For him, the law of God is at least as strong as the law of the country, and even at least certainly as strong as the law of the police. You know, the police say I have to do it, whatever it is, and the country says so I have to do it. Yeah, the person says, I keep to the highway code, because I've got no choice, because if I don't keep to it, and I'm checked up all the time, and I might cause an accident, I'm not bothered. I'm ready to drive myself where I want to get to. I want to get everywhere as fast as possible. And therefore I'll take corners, I'll go this way. But that person, you can't really praise him for fulfilling all the laws of the highway code, because there's all the time there's different ways whereby they can find out, they'll find me, and I won't have a driving license anymore. And I need to try. But of course, the real good driver is the one who's got real consideration. The one who says, whatever the highway code says what's permissible, it's not good enough these days. Especially in Israel, it's not good enough. Whatever you see a cyclist, they've got cyclists all over. It's a big danger, in Israel especially. And the highway code allows the bicycles to go on the street. So if I knock someone with a bicycle, it's not my fault. Because I kept all the laws of the cyclist didn't keep the laws. But the person who thinks, my aim, even if, according to the law, the way I drove it was below the speed limit and everything, was the right way, and this cyclist didn't. But still, he's got consideration for life. And therefore, he's very concerned. He'll stop even if somebody wants to cross the road when there's no proper crossing. But the good driver will say, well, it's not my fault if I injure him, because he shouldn't have gone across the road there, had no permission. But the good driver, the driver's concerned for human life and human injury, so he's got a choice. Is he just concerned to keep the law? So also with mitzvahs it's like that. So which is greater? A person keeps the mitzvah because he loves doing it, the mitzvah. So he does it all. Or because he loves Hashem, there's no commandment. Will he do a mitzvah when there's no commandment? Who's greater? What does it say in the Gemara? Who's greater? The person who's commanded to do it, the person who's not commanded.
Probably the person that's not commanded.
It says the greatest one is commanded.
That's commanded, really.
Commanded,
Yeah. Why?
Because if somebody tells you what to do, you have to need very good to go against what they tell you to do.
It says, I'm telling you, it says in some of the greater authorities that a person to do the mitzvahs which he doesn't, is not commanded to do, is far greater than the person who's commanded to do. It also applies to non-Jews. Non-Jews, talking about Shmiras Shabbos and other matters, to keep it one halacha, they shouldn't do it. But a non-Jew who loves doing mitzvah, he's not commanded to do it, but he loves doing it. Just out of love. The mitzvah is not commanded to do. With certain exceptions, but there are many mitzvahs in the Torah that non-Jews like to fulfill. So they get a reward. But they only get a reward if someone is not commanded, and not as great as the reward, the one who's commanded. But what's the reason given for it?
Probably because
somebody tells you what to do, you have to go against him. He's telling me to, I don't have to listen to him. I don't.
Probably because there's a partnership involved. If somebody commands somebody to do something, because they're also partly involved with the person. Versus if a person's not commanded, they're only doing it themselves. So if you're commanded, then you're not only partaking in mitzvah, but somebody's partaking with you out of fear. That's what I think, at least.
So if you look carefully in the sources of Gemara and Tosfos and other sources, they say that from the point of view of the form of the action, it's great to do it out of love and out of fear. Great to do it because you want to do it, then you love to do it than if you just want to fulfill the commandment. But why did it Gadol HaMitzvah also? Because there's a certain power in the human being. If you're told to do something, then the ego resists. It says, I want individual autonomy and not heteronomy. That's in philosophical terms. Heteronomy means that there's an authority outside me which dictates to me what I have to do. And that is an offense to my own ego. Ego says, I have to decide. So therefore it creates a spirit of rebellion. Therefore when you want children or students to do something, don't tell them you've got to do this, got to do the other. Try to get them to be self-motivated, to do things out of love and through their own choice. Let them choose it. There's even today some psychologists use it. If you want someone to do something, always give them an option. They should always be able to choose this way and that way. The parent says to a child also, do this, do that. Tell him, look, I want you to choose to do one of these two. Then they feel their own ego is involved. And then they're ready to choose. Once they know they can choose it, it satisfies the sense of the ego.
Well, how's that different?
And if you command them a bit too strongly, then they'll react. They'll say, what, I have to do it? If I have to do it, I say I don't want to do it. And why do I say this? Because this is so much developed these days, this concept of rebellion, which exists naturally. It exists in every human being, because when you're a baby and when you grow up, you know how much you depended on parents. They say, I have to do everything my parents say, otherwise I can't live in the house. So therefore, I have to do it. I don't want to do it so much, but the feeling I don't want to do it grows when their own ego grows, when they have an independent understanding. And that's the adolescent stage, is the time when the person's own personality wakes up. It's called even na'arut. Na'a means to wake up. To arouse. Their own ego begins to raise itself up. So to control that is not easy. That's why Gadol, you've got to get over it. So to get over that stage is difficult. It's much easier if you can have choice. But if you have choice, really, that's your own situation. To recognize, I've got the choice. That's one way you can explain Kovalem Hakagigas. Well, that was a concept that when Am Yisrael said Na'aseh v'nishma, so it was nevertheless forced on them. That means it is forced, but it was given in a manner that Am Yisrael should themselves choose. What do you prefer? You want to exist, or you want to disappear? You've got the choice to be a Jew or not to be a Jew. At Har Sinai, Am Yisrael also had the choice. That's why first there's a contradiction. How can you say Kovalem Hagagigas if Am Yisrael said Na'aseh v'nishma, Ovo chulam bivris yachad Na'aseh v'nishma omru ke'echad? They said of their own choice. They chose to become the people, not like the anti-Semitic Hillel Belloc where I come from England. He said, how odd of God to choose the Jews. Why should he choose the Jews? Because it's one of the sources of anti-Semitism. Why choose the Jews? But it's not so odd because the Jews chose God. That's what the Jewish wit replied. The Jews chose God. Avraham chose God. And the Jews said Na'aseh v'nishma. But it says, when they saw the enormous revelation with everything, they had no choice left. So the answer is, yeah, that's to tell them that really, once you make the choice, and you chose to do it, then Hashem transformed into commandment. Now once you've got the commandment, now you've got the method. How can you cope with both of them? So from one angle, Gadol, you should recognize the fact that it's forced should not destroy your own freedom of choice to do it out of love. That's a high level to reach. It's too simple.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So
Can we? First, I want to go on here in the text. Let's just look at this. this paragraph deals with this whole question. He said, נתיבות שייך גם במקום שיש בחירה. הרי שרק הבוחר יגיע לידי אבא. The person who chooses can reach love. כי רק הוא יכול, the person who's chosen love, only he can give voluntarily. That's where we find amongst the angels, we find the principle of Yira. Because the angels are really functionaries of Hashem. But they're like robots to fulfill whatever His will is. These angels, they have fear. Okay, and they have no freedom of choice. It's the angels have a symbolical concept, they have one leg. That's why Amida we stand with two legs together. We say, although we've got two legs, we have to put them together, but we have to try to become like the angels. Others should be, our choice should reach such a level that we should be able to do it automatically. In other words, there's a certain aspect to this which applies to all of us. I mean, what's better? It's certainly what's better for mankind. The person for whom wounding and hating and killing other people were inhibited against it. And we couldn't do it. We for us, we're mitzvah oisim entirely not to go and kill other people. Yeah, we won't do it. We can't do it. Yeah, even the period of the Holocaust, many people who were asked to kill this because they couldn't do it, weren't able to do it. And certainly we are, from our education, Baruch Hashem, a lot of Western civilizations are still moral to that extent. They're inhibited against murder in cold blood, killing people who are definitely innocent. Can't do it. So that's something forced upon us, and we're grateful forced upon us. But there are other areas where let's say we're going to be provoked by somebody else to anger and to have a vengeful spirit against them. That's something that applies to us, but we've got the choice. If we overcome it, it's a much higher virtue than the fact that we don't murder. Because not to murder is something, it's below our level of choice. It's out of bounds for us. So with the angels, also they can't do wrong, but they can't choose. So therefore they have no possibility. The beings, different beings, the phenomena of nature, and also in the animal world, they don't have really, they may have instinctive, entirely instinctive, maternal powers that they can't change. So what it says, when it says we say concerning the angelic powers that they give power to one another out of love, it means they have unity, to work together in harmony. וזה ביה יפה למה שכתב בראש האדם הראשון חטא לשמו ברצונו להרחיב שטח בחירתו. That's what the Arizal explains, that Adam, according to the description given in the Chumash, what was his motivation to sin? He said sin was, he wanted to widen the power of his choice. Because I was really created like a robot to only do good. When it says, you shouldn't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to him it meant you can't eat. You're inhibited against it. Because Hashem spoke with him, it was like direct revelation. When you have direct revelation, you have no choice left. And he said, I'd like to see what it's like to have the temptation and overcome it. And then it'll be a higher level. He was hopeful, maybe I can be on the level to do things out of love. not out of fear. I want to serve Hashem out of love. How can I do it? I have to have the temptation of going near that fruit, which is the sweetest fruit in some way, knowledge of good and evil. It's like says in another verse in the book of Proverbs that stolen fruit tastes sweeter than permitted fruit. Forbidden fruit has more attraction than permissible fruit, because if I'm attracted to forbidden fruit and I don't have it, so then I have a greater merit than if I don't eat the forbidden fruit because I've got no choice. And that is also how the Maharal explains. It brings it at the bottom. What does it mean that the Torah was given to the people of Israel? They were made to stand under the mountain. That means it was as though the mountain was uprooted. It was about to fall on them. It was not just like a super volcanic eruption. It was very threatening for their whole life. So the sages say they had no choice. And only on Purim they had the choice. So the Maharal explains that he said they saw the clarity of the word of Hashem, the revelation of the Decalogue, that they had no choice left. From the point of view mitzad שראו במהירות גדולה כל כך עד שהם מוכרחים מצד השגת שכלם לקבל התורה. They had to accept it. וידוע, דהיינו שחזרו למלכות גן עדן. Therefore they came back to the level of Gan Eden Adam Rishon before he sinned. But also, he was a robot to do good. And Am Yisrael, although they'd chosen to accept the Torah, but when actually the revelation came, they became like robots to only do fulfill his will. They had no choice left. And in connection with this, so when first the codes came out first on a very developed level, the biblical codes. So there was a mathematician in Switzerland with whom I correspondence, and we put out some articles about the codes. He says you can't accept the codes because they take away freedom of choice. Because it becomes so clear that the Torah could not have been produced by any human being. It can only be produced by God Himself, according to all the mathematical calculations that we make. They've got no choice left but to accept it. And since freedom of choice is a basic principle of the Torah, we can't accept it. So the Maharal explains that, well, it's not so. Because you still have freedom. Even though the soul, to some extent, it took away the ability to go against the will of Hashem, because just like today we're inhibited against idolatry, against murder, against other very severe crimes. We regard these crimes as being almost pathological. So pathological means that there's no way in which normal human beings are able to commit them. So there must be people who don't really have doubt at all. So Adam Arishon and Am Yisrael, when the Torah was given, they had no choice in that respect. But as you see from the sin of the golden calf, they had choice. In other words, it can be a momentary situation when you feel all of a sudden there's nothing in the word, Ein Odom Milvado, we can accept the word of Hashem, we're inhibited against every form of evil, but the self still exists, and therefore came the golden calf, which affected the whole people. And that's also the Adam Arishon. He was given the ability to introduce temptation into his life. So any further questions?
Yes.
To continue, no, it has to be next year.
Reward and punishment.
It has to be in the next year.
And I'll take that.
Yeah. But you can keep these sheets, or if not using them, give them back to you.